You know, it's interesting trying to follow exactly what you guys think. So
yeah, I get that a lot.
You're talking.
It wasn't thinking. I get that a lot because I take a lot of oppositional views and play devil's advocate a lot. So a lot of people don't really know what I think.
I don't know if it was Dusty or Vibe that brought up a good point that I was going to bring up. You know, we had a lot of talk about the prompt itself, and you guys were saying a better prompt might be that America is heading towards National Socialism. If that were the prompt, what would be the argument for that?
I mean, on my side, looking at that, I would actually say, because I actually brought this up, when we're looking at things like federalism coming into California and like going into LA, that could be somebody saying, well, that is a step towards social or national socialism, right? But I would actually refute that by saying George Washington did that, our very first president, in Pennsylvania, right? So throughout history, we've had these tendencies to move towards something like that. But because of our checks and balances, we always come back to center. And so even though we're kind of straying sometimes, we always, because of our checks and balances, come back to center. So I just think it's a bunch of propaganda when people are saying, especially the leftists, and I think it's a lot of Trump hatred, where people are just basically going, oh, Trump is he's a king. He's going to run for a third term. You know what? I'll retire from these panels if he runs for a third presidency and breaks the law. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to have another election, and I don't think we're going to end up in those 25 points. So, I mean, that would be my defense if we did go from is to heading to, because I think at any point of history of the United States, we can always say we've been heading there, but our checks and balances have always brought us back home.
Funny that the first answer to that wasn't making a concentration camp in the swamp for foreigners.
40-year-old virgin fallacy.
You've seen the videos of it coming out where they got a cell phone in there, and it's like, you know, a church gathering, right? It's not like some gulag.
Indian Jesus. I that's why I made the point of like all they hear is the word like National Socialist. They Google it, they see Yahtzee. It's like, oh, we're clearly not 1930s Germany, and it's like no matter how.
That's what it fucking means.
What it is.
Yeah, of course.
Crazy. Things put
That's
together, right?
That's why I'm trying to shift it to what you guys were saying. If we're going to be moving in that direction, I think that's a more fruitful conversation. And there's a lot to be said about that.
It's definitely more fruitful than their misunderstanding of that.
And I can't pull these up on screen or else I would, but coming over from the Rumble side, Nuke sends the big 10 and says, for the puppy or wine, whichever you need, Sarah. Thank you, Nuke. I appreciate that. I might split that one in two. Thank you. Back to you guys.
Tareyak and Cleaner, would you guys agree that the group that used that moniker was not like the most honest and straightforward people?
Which group are you speaking to?
The people who call themselves the National Socialists.
The Germans, yeah.
The Germans.
Sehr good.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it would be fair to say that there was a large number of them that probably weren't very honest and straightforward about shit, you know?
Would you also agree that they were a little more nationalist than anything else?
I don't know, man. I mean, on that, from what I've looked at,
my point is going like, so if you look at the last election that they won, nearly every party in that election had either the People's Party of this, the Social Party of that, social this, social that. Almost, it was the flavor of the time. So obviously they were using socialist rhetoric at the time, which is what historians have pointed out, as a way to populism.
Right.
But
I mean,
man,
that could
come
be.
on. Then you point at any of their policies and be like, yep, that's socialist.
The thing is, though, Effigy, that would speak to the intent.
Socialists are all about
like
class,
I said earlier,
right?
look,
what were the Yahtzees all about?
All we can do to try and figure out intent is look at what they
instead
did,
of class,
and
they
try
use
and say,
race.
okay, well, that is what the intent looks like,
that
or it
makes
isn't.
it a
That's all we
different
can
ideology, though.
No,
we can't say we know for sure what their intent was. All we can do is just try to look at what the history shows.
What do you mean we can't say for sure what their intent was?
We can't say we know what their intent was.
Listed off those points on that
think.
list as though they were in good faith, and you didn't even mention what actually happened because of those points.
They made the
if we were to take
like hypothetical.
one second, FG. If we were to take a society, right, that was like the only political issues they seem to talk about is Christian and capitalism, would it be wrong to say that's a Christian capitalist society?
If they have elections the next term, it might be different.
Yeah, but in terms of like, if both sides, if one side all they care about is Christian issues, the other side all they care about is capitalist issues.
No,
That's the only dynamic
No,
conversation
no.
that happened. Would
These
you not say
two
that that's a
things-
Christian?
Tareyak,
No,
listen,
okay.
listen. These two things are operating in
Okay.
opposition to one another, and you're saying they're the same thing
Yes.
because it's your only choice. You only have
It's
a
the one
choice between the
system.
puppet on the right, the puppet on the left, and something about some MK Ultra. I'm not entirely certain how that ties in, but NASA was established largely by Operation Paperclip.
Yes. Yes. All of these government systems, like it's all
But wait,
The
from
problem
that core ideology.
You
And
guys agree on
what
that.
political stance do they have?
if
what
you
would
guys
you call
agree
it?
on that, can you explain how that helps your point that America is National Socialist?
Yeah, so like when you look at like this whole thing of like no matter who gets in, it seems to be like we're in a uniparty system. George Carlin talks about this in his comedy where it's like you have the illusion of choice, right? Who would be capable of controlling that, like the nation of
Talking
America?
about corporate
You have an organization
ownership.
called the CIA, who literally their job is to destabilize other nations.
Okay.
That's the whole ploy,
that
right?
makes
So
America
and-
Actually,
National
he also
Socialist
said that
because-
yeah, you know, but
corporations-
when you look at how was the CIA established, I gave the whole timeline in terms of like 1945 Operation Paperclip. By 1947 rolls around, you get the National Securities Act, which basically outlines the establishment of the CIA. It also, coincidentally, does a bit of propaganda where it changes the Department of War, Department of Defense. Nice bit of propaganda there, you know what I'm saying? But like the whole infrastructure for what you call the deep state, or what Alex Jones would call the deep state, or whatever the fuck the shadow government, whatever people are calling it, whatever wing you want to call it, that's basically who's controlling the thing, the CIA.
You just
So when you
said
look back to their origins, even like what Sasquatch was saying, even NASA was using.
Okay, but the
You
question was,
determine
how does
what
that
it
make
is.
America more National Socialist? I'm not going to refute anything
Because he
you're
says
saying,
so.
'cause it's not really relevant. But I'm trying to make
Yes.
the connection to all of the things you're saying. Let's assume everything you said is completely accurate and completely true. How does that connect to? Therefore, America is a National Socialist country.
Yeah, so basically they captured a system that's capable of destabilizing nations. So all they've done is subvertly guided your nation towards from what was American ideals towards this National Socialism. Because like I said, you go back through all these elections, 2024, you had Trump, nationalism, America first, rah, rah, rah. You had Kamala, socialism. All the Democrats' positions are all social benefits. That's their main job. That's how they get their voters.
I have
You
a
go
problem.
back through each election, the only options you've had is nationalism or socialism.
Pretty amazing behind that whole little like philosophy there is we can definitely say that like when the Bush administration went into Iraq, like we went there and we occupied, and one of the main things we did was we tried to install democracy. We were thinking that our ideals would work in their country just as well as they work in our country, and we failed miserably. Right now we're in the Trump administration. Now we went in and we bombed Iran. Did we put in soldiers and try to change their mind and try to set up their government just like the CIA has done through Afghanistan and all these things? So we've kind of learned our lesson, and our checks and balances once again are working. In this particular case, we have
wild take.
a idea where we came in. We don't want them to have the nuclear weapons. We want to make sure that Israel is okay, but we're not going in and trying to install our ideas anymore. I think we're changing. I think we're actually, in a sense, in my opinion, moving more away than to that type of country that was killing millions of people in the 30s.